Welcome back and hello if you're new. Creating a beautiful blend of vintage prog sound with a modern twist, Riverside were on track to an absolutely fantastic career in 2015 when unfortunately tragedy struck the band. Riverside sadly lost their longtime guitarist Piotr in early 2016, and after a lengthy absence, the band resolved to carry on without Piotr. Following an offload of electronical, more atmospheric pieces that was Eye of the Soundscape, Riverside have at last come back with their 7th triumphant album, Wasteland. The album's title has meanings that are manifold, which range from this cinematic concept that the band have employed to do with the idea of a post-apocalyptic wasteland, but also the very much more realistic metaphor that the band were somewhat in a wasteland after the death of their friend. One of the secret ingredients to Riverside's absolutely beautiful sound is Mariusz Duda's voice. The frontman has a voice like no other and has this sense of power to it, but also being incredibly delicate at the same time. On Wasteland, Duda exhibits some of the best qualities in Riverside's catalogue.
So you found me after all.
From the moment that the record begins on the day after, we're introduced to Duda's voice, and it immediately creates this air of cinematic. You know, it's just his voice with a big echo that slowly but surely bleeds into the track. But there's also some really great little Gilmour-esque kind of whoa sections in Acid Rain, which, you know, definitely reminded me of Floyd and, you know, those classic 70s prog musicians. Wasteland could well be one of Riverside's most guitar-driven albums. There are huge Gilmour-esque leads on Acid Rain that speak volumes, and Veil of Tears' second half brings to mind almost an Iron Maiden type harmony. There are a couple of people who come in as guest spots, but there's also Mariusz Duda, who actually takes care of some of the solos himself. The other guest musicians consist of Maciej Mele and Mateusz Ogrzarek, I think I've said that right, who plays the solo on Veil of Tears. And it is a beautiful solo, and you can hear this difference in tonality, and I think it really gives Riverside a big breath of fresh air. Although Duda's solos may not necessarily be as complex as what we can see on Veil of Tears, they are incredibly emotional, and you know, those right notes put in at exactly the right time create a fantastic range of emotions. For example, on Lament. There's also more exploration in terms of a cinematic element with the inclusion of strings, following the kind of melancholic closure of Lament. And not only bring to mind this post-apocalyptic atmosphere, but a real sense of sadness. And if you've listened to Riverside before, you'll definitely notice on this album that Wasteland is a hell of a lot darker, particularly on the mysterious opening of Acid Rain, for example. Nevertheless, darkness doesn't necessarily have to be a conventional heavy take, although there are some absolutely fantastic moments on this album. There are melancholic lead lines on Guardian Angel, which would sit nicely alongside Love, Fear and the Time Machine, for example, and similarly Duda's vocals on Lament also have this real sense of darkness about them. Even River Down Below opens up with this gorgeous acoustic section and sounds as though Duda is actually addressing the audience directly.
I'd like to tell you what I dream about. I'd like to say how much I miss you, but
whereas the previous effort, Love, Fear and the Time Machine, was very much more subdued, Wasteland features a lot more energy into it. For example, in the lead single Veil of Tears, there's a groove-oriented riff that appears, and particularly in its latter section when we go into that Iron Maiden type melody. The record may not necessarily be the heaviest thing that you're going to be hearing this year, but the combination of the lighter material mixed with these heavier sounds really makes for a beautiful contrast, and not only makes everything stand out, but again carries this narrative that the band are focusing on. And it's also worth mentioning that the band have included a fantastic instrumental which lasts just shy of 10 minutes, which is the struggle for survival. And again, plays on all these different elements that Riverside have put together in their past. There's also some fantastic elements of keyboards which you can see on Lament, which again add to this progressive sound that the band are after. And the record ends with, again, a final cinematic piece of The Night Before, which bookends the album brilliantly and leads things to a very logical close. It was, however, sort of hard to get into, I have to say. It took me a lot of repeated listens to really understand this atmosphere, because Riverside is such a minimalist entity. It can be a bit difficult even listening to it on the train because there's so much detail that you miss. You really have to sit down and listen to this one. Despite the tragic circumstances that Riverside were subjected to, Wasteland features the perfect amount of melancholy with a dash of aggression that the band did definitely need. It's another fantastic solid release that build on the band's very nearly shaken foundations. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Thank you so much for watching. If you did, hit that like and subscribe button. Also make sure to check out my series over on Metal Sucks Apocalyptic Anniversaries. Drop a comment and I'll see you guys next week for another review. Alright, take care.